Man, I hope you didn't stay up and watch that game last night. I really hope. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Oilers 3, Canucks 2 last night in Game 7 of their Western Conference series. And boy, was it not interesting. Don't pay any attention to the score. Edmonton dominated from the very beginning in every facet, and the outcome was never in doubt. I can't understand at all how Vancouver showed as poorly as they did. Look, they knew they weren't going to have Brock Besser, but they also knew it was going to be Game 7 at home, and the place was just a funeral, which is normal out there, by the way. Vancouver's got the quietest arena in the NHL for whatever reason, and you could just tell on TV there wasn't a sound being made by anyone. So you don't have your leading goal scorer, you don't have any energy in the place, and oh, by the way, you don't have the puck, because the Oilers had 23 out of the first 26 shots registered in the game. Not making that up. That's how it was. And by that point, the Oilers had a 2-0 lead, and that was that. Whatever. I don't think the winner of that series is going anywhere anyway. And the reason is that the Stars are superior to both of those teams. And the Stars are going to be, for very good reason, favored to beat the Oilers in the Western Final. But let me ask you a question here. And it has to do more with the Stars than it does the Oilers. What's the one thing that you've heard about the teams that are favored so far in this tournament? What's the description or terminology that's most closely associated with all of them? Depth. It's all about depth. When you hear about the Stars, you hear about the 4 lines, you hear about all the guys they have on the blue line. You've heard a lot of the same, not just this year, but in other recent years about the Panthers. The Rangers have what I think is underappreciated depth, up front and on the back end. The only remaining team that I think doesn't have it is Edmonton. They just happen to have run into a really non-competitive opponent. But hey, if it makes them feel any better, I mean, they won a Game 7 in which Connor McDavid had no points and, by the way, was barely visible. So today's probably not the day to be poking fun at Edmonton's depth. These other 3 teams, though, they do run 3 lines, 4 lines. And those 3rd and 4th lines will produce for them. And when they produce, it's not seen as some sort of act of God. You look at who is scoring a lot of the Stars' bigger goals in their 2 series to date. And it hasn't just been the Jason Robertsons. It's been a bunch of different dudes. Look at who got the Panthers past the Bruins. It wasn't Matthew Tkachuk. It just wasn't. It wasn't sudden 50-goal scorer Sam Reinhart either. Sure, there was a whole lot of Sasha Barkov, but there was also a whole lot of Asa Lundells, you know? This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And since I can't ever help but think of any of this hockey stuff without putting it into some sort of Pittsburgh prism, I look at the Penguins and I just keep asking myself, what do you want that 3rd line to be? Do you want a 3rd scoring line? Do you want 2 solid shutdown checking / agitation lines for your 3rd and 4th? Or do you want what Kyle Dubas put together for this past season, which is neither? I'm being facetious. He didn't want to do that. That's just how it ended up. And for my taste, a lot of that was just a little bit too rigid. In other words, you have a Riley Smith, you have a Rickard Rakell, and you don't necessarily see either of them as being interchangeable with a third line. So what happens is your top six will suffer because you're not getting enough out of guys like that, and then you don't have anywhere to put them because you know they're not going to be productive on a third or fourth line. Whereas, and this is why Mike Sullivan loves the Brian Rust model so much, you can have a player who just goes where you need him and gets done what you need to get done. And that's what I see a lot of when I look at 3 of these 4 remaining teams in these playoffs. Now, does that mean that the Penguins aren't going to be a complete team, a contending team, until they have some other version of HBK resurrected for them? I don't know about that. I mean, HBK was a pretty rare event. But if you were to have a couple of wingers around someone like Lars Eller who can handle things at both ends, maybe you're taking some of that load off of the top 2 lines. Or, to go completely the other way, if you surround Lars with a couple of just hellraisers, Brandon Tanev types, and you make the Penguins genuinely, say it with me, hard to play against, well, now you've got something too. But what you can't do is what Dubas did. I'm sorry. I know there's a bunch of you, when you listen to this show, you think I'm picking on the guy relentlessly. I'm not. I have hope for him. In the future. I don't have any hope of rewriting what his first year was like. I really don't. You can't swing and miss that many moves in that short a time span. Oh, but all credit to him, he did bring Eller, When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from AJ, who says, DK, I love Jake Gensel, but the Penguins need help in the bottom 6. I'd rather find a number of guys who can give the Penguins a better ability to run legit multiple lines. I also like ideas like maybe picking up somebody else from the Hurricanes who have a ton of free agents they're going to have to deal with. AJ's right. For anyone who doesn't know, Carolina has 10, count them, 10 players headed toward the open market, which is one of the reasons that I was skeptical all along that they'd make any kind of push to keep Jake at all, but apparently they're ready to do that. But they'll be letting some real live hockey players go out there to other teams. How do you build from that? What kind of priorities do you have? How much money can you afford to put into forwards, into wingers? Don't forget, when I asked you guys just about a week ago, what was the one position, if you were Kyle Dubas and you had money, that you would address the most emphatically? And it was almost unanimous that it was left-handed defense. And that's largely, I'm sure, a show of lack of faith, I guess you could call it, in Ryan Graves. But that's where you would put your money. And if you do that, if you go and you get yourself a left-handed defenseman, whether it's through trade or more likely through free agency, what are you doing? Well, here's what I mean when I say that, because I'd want one too, okay? But I still have 5 more years on Graves' contract. Not a soul on the planet's going to take that off my hands. And if I bring in another, then I move Graves to the third pairing, okay? Well, you can't just have him sit in a press box for $5 million a year. So you move him to the third pairing. Well, then I've just killed John Ludwig. I've just killed him right off my roster. I don't even give him a chance. I've also killed, for whatever this is worth, Ryan Shea and P.O. Joseph. So especially where Ludwig is concerned, because, man, just stay on the rink, dude. Let everybody have a good look at you. Stay on the rink. And if he were to do that, you might have yourself one of those third-pairing defensemen that, to be honest with you, that you're seeing in the playoffs right now, where everybody seems to have one of those, one guy who can do some damage back there. It doesn't have to be Nikita Zadorov, although, man, I would take that guy. But it's got to be somebody who can answer the bell or sometimes even instigate. But for the rest of this, I really think that the first question that needs to be answered internally is, what do we want out of this bottom six? What are we looking for here? And related, can we clone Brian Rust or even Michael Bunting for that matter? Bunting's another one of those guys that you look at and you don't feel it's absolutely positively necessary to have him in your top six. He is on this team. But you could just kind of move them around a little bit and not feel all that weird about it. Or better yet, you have answers that come from within the system. What if Sam Poulin is finally ready to graduate? Sam has some of that profile to him where Sam could be a top six guy. He could be a bottom six guy. He could be interchangeable. He's got to score, and he's got to score consistently at this level to be valuable. But that's the kind of stuff that you need to be looking at. I think it's broader more than it is specific. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.